This is Intelligence Matters, sponsored by Ginkgo Biosecurity, whose cutting-edge biological intelligence platform empowers national security decision-makers to identify and respond to emerging biological threats.
I'm host Michael Allen with Beacon Global Strategies. Today I'm joined by Major General Tamir Hayman, the Executive Director of the Institute for National Security Studies. Major General Hayman is the former chief of the Israeli Defense Forces Intelligence Directorate from 2018 to 2021. Major General Hayman joins us today for a discussion about the Israeli military intelligence and its role in the ongoing conflict in Gaza and post-October 7th. We'll be right back with that discussion after a break.
Biosecurity matters. What's biosecurity? It's the mission-critical industry safeguarding against 21st century biological threats. Biology doesn't respect borders. Ginkgo Biosecurity monitors critical assets and produces actionable biointelligence for national security decision-makers confronting biological threats, whether they are natural, accidental, or malicious. Ginkgo's technology tracks deadly pathogens worldwide, and our globally scaled platform, the first of its kind, detects outbreaks in near real time, deploys AI-powered threat assessments, and identifies the source of a threat, mitigating outbreaks before they become national emergencies. When lives and livelihoods are on the line, every second counts. Ginkgo Biosecurity, the biosecurity partner for an uncertain new era. Learn more at biosecuritymatters.com.
General Hayman, it's Michael Allen. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Michael. Thank you very much for having me.
You were the chief of the IDF's Intelligence Directorate. I think Americans are familiar generally with Mossad, but not as much as your intelligence directorate. Could you explain what it does and its relation to Mossad?
You need to compare it to the establishment in the United States. During my visits to my colleagues in the United States, I had to travel through maybe 7 different agencies that all of them considered themselves as partners or colleagues, because the IDI, Israel Defense Intelligence, is much more than a research and analysis branch. It consists of most of the reconnaissance capabilities of military. That is, we have the human capabilities similar to the one that they have in Mossad, but smaller one. The largest agencies under the IDI is Unit 8200, which responsible on SIG, cyber, common, or all the intelligence community of Israel. There is the Geoint unit called 9900, which is responsible on imaging from satellite, the through aerial surveillance and up to drones, little drones. And it has a large research branch and a special operation unit, which is very large. It's something similar to the capabilities of the Mossad in terms of special operation. And all of those 5 units are under one umbrella of the chief of or head of military intelligence.
Got it. So you, like here in the United States, there's analysis, human intelligence, and even covert action, sometimes in different agencies within the same government.
Yeah, and that's the difference. The difference is it's in Israel, it's all located under one umbrella of the Israel Defense Intelligence. Our colleagues in the United States sometimes envy me because coordination is much easier when it's all under one commander. And because Israel is relatively, the intelligence community is relatively small, the cooperation between the IDI and Mossad and Shin Bet is much simpler and easier to conduct between and then if you compare that to the agencies under the DNI or the different agencies in Washington. It's closer, it's smaller. It it is like any other Rome, depended on human connections and friends, and because most of the intelligence community in Israel came out from the army, eventually developed into other sections in the civilian aspect, but the coordination is much better, and it is something to duplicate if possible in other realms. Another thing that is different from the situation in the United States is that till now, or till this war, is the failure of the 7th of October, the head of the IDI is the ones that's responsible on national assessment. That is me, as although being military major general, I used to brief the prime minister on a weekly or monthly basis, and I, as the head of intelligence, I used to brief the cabinet. That is inside a civilian entity, the cabinet that formally in Israel is the commander of the armed forces. I was the intelligence officers that should provide them intelligence and information to the strategic decision making in the political levels.
Well, that makes you the perfect guest for us today, and we're going to get to the role of intelligence in the Gaza war and elsewhere. We'll get to the capabilities of Israel, perhaps to one day bomb the Iranian nuclear program, and we'll definitely talk about the pager operation as well. But first, let me just get you to set the strategic scene in Israel. When I met you on a trip that I attended recently, I heard about a pre-October 7th mindset that Israel relied on deterring its enemies, being able to detect whether they were going to come at them and use overwhelming force. And then it was shorthanded that October 7th shattered that security paradigm, and that Israel now feels compelled to go directly after its competitors, mostly Iranian proxy groups. Can you sort of tell me, is that a valid way to look at what's going on in Israel? And if not, how would you describe it?
Well, you are right. You hit the nail in the head. It is the basic principles remain. That is early detections, decisive victory, and projected deterrence, and defensive capabilities on all aspects of defense. But now, as we're revisiting our national security strategy, we are going to add another layer, which is called the prevention. That is initiating military operation in order to cripple strategic threats much before it developed into something that threatened Israel's national security. And that principle, although it's not really new, because back then, before October 7, we had this, what we call the operation between the war. But that was a prevention on a tactical and operational scale. Now, prevention is a principle. It developed into something more broader. You cannot conclude from that, or you mustn't conclude from that Israel is going to be the next Sparta in the Middle East, that we're going to go on endless endeavors to conquer all of the Middle East, and we're not going to know how to live with risks and manage risks. But it's a more aggressive foreign affairs in terms of military projection and military deterring of evolving threats.
Okay, that's completely understandable. What about, or how would you describe the role of intelligence failure in this new security paradigm, or the addition of prevention, aggressive prevention activities? Is the prevailing wisdom now that we should have been able to detect October 7th, and I know you did detect it, and maybe it didn't get to the right people, or was it simply the Iranians had too much arrayed against us and it was bound to happen anyway?
Oh, let's break that into two. First of all, it's one aspect. It's the balance between capabilities and intentions. We as Israelis were so confident in our ability to identify intentions, so we lost the balance. That's the general sentiment that lives here in Israel. It's always a matter of balance. And we can quote, as we learned in the schools in the army, that intentions can change overnight, and capabilities are stable, and you must be prepared against capabilities. But it seems like because of success, because of our sense of superiority in terms of intelligence, we have lost the balancing, lost the equation, the equilibrium in a manner that we were much more reliant on intentions, strategic intentions by the enemy. We were pretty sure that we we can identify shifting in the intentions, and we can take more calculus risks in terms of preparing against capabilities. Now we are shifting, we are back to capabilities in a more traditional manner. And the role of the intelligence is to identify the capabilities, to identify the threats in terms of what is the fourth generation acquisition, all of the elements of force build-up in the other side, in the red side, and according to that, to create the capabilities in the blue side, in the IDF, to be prepared for that. So that's one thing that changed over the 7th of October. There are extremes in Israel who think that intentions are not important at all, and you must build your capabilities only in terms of capabilities. Israeli cannot afford that. We will lose our added values as a high-tech nation. We will lose our capabilities in terms of education, health care, science, open economy, etc. The other element needs to be revisited is what happened during the successes of the operation between the war. We had tremendous tactical achievements. We knew as an intelligence to identify a small box in the Damascus International Airport and strike it in a timing which was amazing. And that kept us satisfied that we are controlling the challenges, the threats. Well, maybe we did that in the northern arena. It was not sufficient enough in the northern arena, and we have totally neglected Gaza and Hamas, considering it as a tactical issue that is totally controlled because we have the underground wall against tunnels, and we had 4 layers of surface-to-air capabilities, and we have good intelligence, so it's manageable. And the fact that there's no political process really is a fact that you cannot influence. That is a political decision. So we're managing the situation, we are managing the conflict, we are narrowing the threats, but neglecting it, postponing the problems for different times, and that really hit us on the 7th of October.
I see. And just quickly before we move on to other items, there is not currently a investigation into the intelligence failures of October 7th, is there?
There is this internal military commissions or after operation research. It's a more military type
after action report.
Action report, yes, and not what should be a committee, civilian committee, judicial civilian committee that is appointed by the Supreme Judge. And this is something that myself and others are totally advocating for.
So intelligence obviously deeply intertwined with strategic and tactical warning for any nation, but especially the case in Israel. Let's talk a little bit about after October 7th. I think my first thought was, well, the Israelis will figure out quickly where many of their hostages are held. And I imagined I would see many more special forces raids than we ultimately did. I wonder now if you did a bit of an after-action report on that, it was that, the tunnels were just too vast, or you knew where many of them, of the hostages were, but it would have been too dangerous. They could have been killed if you had gone after them. What do you think the story is there?
Well, the learning curve of Hamas in the initial phases of the war was impressive. But back 2 weeks from the beginning of the war, we had extracted one of the hostages, and the Hamas immediately carried an investigation and changed the rules, so it became more complicated. Later on, we used a different method. That method was gone, was destroyed after the first extraction. Then later on, we changed methods and we created another one which extracted. Unfortunately, that was failed. But although the failure of the special operation, they have learned exactly what was the method of action and rechanged all of the norms of how to guard the hostages and where to locate them, etc., etc. And then later on, we had succeeded on extracting hostages, and they again and again and again. So if you compare, in order for us to create different methods that is so unique, that can penetrate to highly dense places, underground facilities, and to extract our hostages, this is very complicated. Everybody can imagine how complicated it is. You need special capabilities. It took us too long to create different methods, and it took them less time to change methods on how to protecting. Eventually, it reached a decision by Yahya Sinwar that if there are any possible options that Israel is going to go to a special operation, the first thing they must do is murder all the hostages. And they've done that in Khan Yunis, in Rafah. And although our forces was about 200 yards from that, they've assassinated 6 hostages. And that was the major moment when we have decided to diminish the operational effort and go to the negotiation and bring the hostages through a hostage deal. Secondly, unlike other occasions, we had 247 hostages in the first day. They were all spread all across the Gaza Strip and in different little tiny isolated locations. And they were reshuffling it about every 3 weeks. That created enormous challenge for intelligence gathering. We knew broadly where are the hostages, but not in a manner that is sufficient enough for a special operation.
I understand. Let me talk a little bit about the role of intelligence as a covert action tool. In the United States, we might say that is a policy role as well. I was sort of schooled at the White House from the CIA detailees there that an intelligence covert action program is not in and of itself policy. It can support policy, it can support other limited objectives, but it's not the primary driver. However, it seemed to me that the pagers and the walkie-talkie operations against Lebanese Hezbollah played probably one of the bigger intelligence roles in effecting a policy outcome that I can think of in the modern era. I can think of other things we've done to the Iranian nuclear program, but this just seemed like an enormous operation that had serious repercussions. Do you agree with that? And can you otherwise just sort of describe the strategic dimensions of the pager attack?
I agree. I'll take it even to more extreme. It was half accidental. half a force of use it or lose it situation, the pager. So you can argue that driven from necessity of use it or lose it because of different elements, they were close to cover it, to uncover it. So we were forced to operate it or lose it forever. That created a chain of events that led to strategic new ideas and created a whole new strategic and policy vision that ended up with us defeating Hezbollah and creating a new situation in the north, which is totally different, and that led to what happens in Syria, and that led Iran of acknowledging that the basic assumptions or basic principle of its national security that depends on proxies are wrong. So from a tiny little tactical event to a regional, strategic, historical involvement. But the truth is different. The pager attack was a part of a framework of operations that we were planning to execute in the case of a full-scale war against Hezbollah. In that aspect, we had a constructed plan of action, which the pagers are embedded as a layer inside the chain of events, in chains of efforts. So you mustn't learn that, okay, accidents can change history. It's only if those tiny little tactical elements are reorganized and inside the framework of an operational concept that is subordinated to strategy, to potential strategy. We had all the elements ready, and the fact that we were surprised and forced to initiate one of the components inside this operational framework drove us to carry out the whole operational framework, adjusted because we didn't do everything as planned. But it was very, very suitable to the strategic environment.
Right. Did the fact that it worked so well, did that surprise anyone within the Israeli high command?
Well, there are two attacks. There is the pager and the walkie-talkie. Pager was carried out as planned, and it was effective as expected. Okay, it was not supposed to kill hundreds. It was supposed to cripple the chain of command and to create some kind of a chaos or that Hezbollah will lose its balance, will be unable to mobilize all its capabilities. And during that short period of time of unbalanced situation, to continue immediately the additional strikes planned. The walkie-talkie attack was less effective than predicted, and because of the fact that it was conducted not in the timing of the general operation architecture where we were supposed to execute it.
Oh, were they supposed to happen simultaneously, walkie-talkie and pagers?
No.
No.
Walkie-talkies are in the initial phases of transferring from retreat to wartime. During the operation where Hezbollah mobilized its forces, and it uses the pagers in order to inform operatives where to go and how to mobilize the situation. After mobilizing, after getting geared and ready to fight, then the strike of the walkie-talkies should appear, where you have all of them wearing the fighting gear, and it has a distinct place where you can place the walkie-talkie. It's just across your heart. That's how they organize the vests of the fighting. So if potentially all of the Hezbollah fighters were wearing fighting gears and wearing the walkie-talkies on their fighting gears, on their vest, who could have expected at least 30,000 wounded in a very massive manner.
But a lot of them just didn't have it on
No,
because they suspected after pager. Yeah, got it.
It's one of them that they suspected. And the other issue that Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, did not anticipate a full-scale war, and he didn't order a full mobilization of the Hezbollah.
We're speaking with General Tamir Hayman. We'll be right back.
Beacon Global Strategies is the premier national security advisory firm. Beacon works side by side with leading companies to help them understand national security policy, geopolitical risk, global technology policy, and federal procurement trends. Beacon's insight gives business leaders the decision advantage. Founded in 2013, Beacon develops and supports the execution of bespoke strategies to mitigate business risk, drive growth, and navigate a complex geopolitical environment. With a bipartisan team and decades of experience, Beacon provides a global perspective to help clients tackle their toughest challenges.
Let's talk about Nasrallah. I want to get to his death in a second, but can you talk a little bit about the elaborate nature of the messages that the Israelis must have sent to Lebanese Hezbollah over a long period of time to condition them to believe that Israel was not interested in a full-scale war and would not assassinate, so to speak, Nasrallah?
Well, we did do that. We had the Americans from the beginning of the war conveyed the message that Israel is not interested in war, and you should refrain. You should avoid opening a secondary front, because if you open a secondary front, we can't really stop Israelis from attacking you. That was supposed to be a deterring messaging to Nasrallah. Nasrallah got it all different manner. He got it as a full disclosure of United States that provides him the assurances that Israel is not going to a full-scale war. Knowing Israelis, believing the Americans that they are conveying a truth message, a truly honest message, Nasrallah was arrogantly convinced that Israel will never go to a full-scale war with Hezbollah. He maintained this belief up to the last day, and if he was less arrogant, a little less self-confidence, he would probably get the picture that it's going on a single way. By the way, part of his staff suggested and evaluated and assessed that Israel is going to go all the way, and Hezbollah needs to escalate in order to deter Israel. But arrogancy and the fact that Israel, through a long period of time, over a year almost, gradually and slowly eroded strategic capabilities, each time taking only one component, one commander at a time. A little by little, Nasrallah was convinced that this is really enforces the assumption that Israel is not going to all the way, because we're walking a baby steps toward. Eventually, the escalation was very quickly. He lost all of his staff, all of his brilliant commanders, efficient commanders who know how to operate Hezbollah, lost its strategic weapons, and then was struck and killed. And that left all the successor without capabilities, without officials that can know how to operate Hezbollah, basically stripped of all capabilities.
So that's so interesting. So over time, Israel not only is able to message him, but Hezbollah concludes by the one-off or seeming one-off nature of some of the attacks that it's not a comprehensive, full-scale attack at him. So he concludes he'll be okay, and then takes less security arrangements around himself, thereby leaving himself vulnerable.
I can share with you something. You know, Muhsen was his nickname. I forgot his real name. He was in the strategic, he's number 2 in chain of command, strategic thinking, the most important and most powerful man in terms of strategic and control. And one side, at one event, Nasrallah really insists upon maintaining routine and not going underground and not securing, in order not to reflect to the other side that it is Israel that they are ready for a full-scale war. That was considered by Nasrallah as a deterring effect. That ended up us striking and eliminating and killing Muhsen. And after Muhsen was dead, he still was stuck in his opinion that Israel is not going all the way, because otherwise they would kill more before. It's amazing. The arrogancy killed him eventually.
So here in the United States, and I think in Israel as well, we heard ad nauseum that Hezbollah has a much more sophisticated force, many, many more rockets, smaller ballistic missiles. We heard this constantly. Now, we've talked about how Hezbollah was degraded by the pager operation, the walkie-talkies. We've just discussed some of the strategic arrogance here. But it still seemed like Israel was able to best Hezbollah a lot easier than any of us expected, even though you all were engaged in degrading all of these missiles over time. Is there a dimension that we're missing when we talk about why Hezbollah seems to have gone down relatively easily?
Okay, part of it is a special bits of intelligence, not bits, it's a strategic achievement by Israeli intelligence that basically revealed the positions of all Hezbollah agents in a very accurate manner. That it was a 10 years effort. Concluding that 10 years, Hezbollah was fully exposed to the Israeli intelligence to the level that, although we sometimes talked about that, Hezbollah and Nasrallah could have never imagined that the penetration is so deep into its establishment. So, that we transformed that very specific and accurate intelligence into matching it or coupling it with very accurate fire capabilities by the Israeli Air Force, and the combination between the Israeli defense intelligence and the Israeli Air Force in a combined effort of mutual planning created a machine that was able in a matter of 6 or 7 hours to cripple 2,000 stockpiles of Hezbollah. Secondly, and this is another mistake of Hezbollah, he planned all his fire campaign like a stopwatch, very advanced, coordinated, timed efforts. That is, using drones in order to cripple radars. Later on, use stupid or regular rockets in order to create some kind of absorbent that all of the radars will be disturbed, and then using accurate PGMs in order to cripple surface-to-air capabilities, and that will expose Israel totally from the Iron Dome and other specific special surface-to-air capabilities. That was the initial phase of the campaign. If that happens and Israel is fully exposed, then came the barrage of thousands of weapons. That was the plan. And because of the fact that he uses parts of the plan separately, and we crippled that separately, at the end of the day, when he was willing or wanting to launch all of that synchronized capability, he lost it. It was dismantled during the months before the more extensive part of the war.
Gotcha. Before we go to the capabilities to take out Iranian nuclear facilities. Let me ask you about one last operation that captured the world's attention. The Israeli military recently released videos of special forces raids into Syria, into a mountain where burrowed underneath were Iranian ballistic missiles, a factory, if you will, in a variety of different compartments underneath the mountain. And of course, you all had to breach the incredibly heavy doors and blow up everything inside of it. I mean, one, can we just talk about the extraordinary nature of that raid? And two, what about the decision to release the photos of it? Is that a message to the world, maybe even the Iranians, that we can get after what you may have stored in or your centrifuge halls that are in and under mountains?
Okay. 7 years ago, after a major strike that Israel conducted on the Masya military industry in northern Syria, we have destroyed assembly lines of heavy rockets for the Iranians that was assembled in Syria and was transported into Hezbollah in Lebanon. After eliminating that, they tried a second time to rebuild it above ground, and then we have struck it twice and eliminated. So there, they started a strategic decision of all the axis, Iran, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, to transfer assembly line and manufacturing capabilities of strategic weapons to underground. That kind of a facility that was struck in Syria is not unique. Types similar to that are located in Iran, in Iraq, and in Lebanon. Okay, and it is considered to be by all of the axis as undestroyable. You cannot penetrate it. It's heavily under the ground, and it's heavily guarded, and there are layers of defense, not just in terms of surface-to-air capabilities, but ground operation that secure the site. It's a hollow mountain. You can penetrate it from with bombs, with heavy bombs from above. So in order to destroy it, you must have very good intelligence, up to the level of the axis of the door and the weight of the door, and how the degree of declining when you are entering inside, and how exactly what's the concept of protecting that, the operational protecting that in ground capabilities and area capabilities. After you have good intelligence, it is really challenging to get all of the details, because above ground is easily what happened inside the tunnels, in an exact location where all of the manufacturing machines are located, and exactly what type of machine is it, and where is vulnerability points, and how is the cables are stretched inside the underground, and where is the lightning switch, etc. It's very, very detailed information. You assign it to a special operation. This time we had assigned it into 2 special operation units that competed between them. And in that terms, competition is good. Every unit tries better to create different concept and be more efficient. So one was with the IDI, and the other was in the Air Force. Eventually, we have used the Air Force because they were more ready. And the IDI during the war, the Sayeret Matkal, was used in other operations in Gaza, etc. And it was a combination of deceiving, crippling the surface-to-air capabilities of the Syria, blocking reinforcement, penetrating, creating the destruction of the underground and extracting the force. Very, very complicated, done perfectly. And of course, I've answered the second question because that phenomena is highly spreaded all across the Middle East. It was the fact that we have exposed it was a clear signaling of our capabilities all across the Middle East.
Gotcha. So interesting messaging again here. So let's get to the big question. After the volleys between Iran and Israel, many in the United States have concluded that Iran is uniquely vulnerable now, not only because Hezbollah, the Damocles sword over Israel, is gone, but because so much of the Iranian-Syrian air defense across Syria has been destroyed. Same with parts of the area around Tehran. Others have talked about the Russian air defense system, the S-300, and at least one occasion, maybe more, have been outright destroyed. One, just from you putting on your military intelligence hat, is that accurate? And two, can you give me more of an assessment of how things are in Israel? Are things now more likely? Are there a substantial number of people arguing, well, you know what? We don't need to wait for a breakout or a sneak out. It's the opportune time to do it now because they're historically weak.
I think if you ask most of the security establishment and most of Israeli citizens, everybody don't really understand why are not we exploiting the vulnerabilities and the fact that it's a historical opportunity to eliminate the nuclear sites right now. Because just a quick reminder, the main obstacle was a regional war. We could have struck the tactical element of eliminating nuclear sites in Iran is not that complicated, okay? It's complicated. It's not a walk in the park, but okay, but we can do that. The problem was previously that if we do that, Hezbollah will strike in enormous powers and capabilities, and that will initiate a regional war. Well, the situation right now is that Hezbollah is crippled. 80% out of the strategic capabilities are gone or destroyed. It seems like his chain of command is destroyed or crippled for the long period of time. And in a tactical manner, Iran is fully exposed right now without its strategic surface-to-air capabilities. So why not finish the job right now? That's a hanging question. It depends on regional architecture. It depends on strategic evaluation of the United States position, and it was during a transition between two administrations. I think that it was very clever from the Israeli side not to go all the way in the retribution. The fact that we insist on being backed by United States, the fact that the deployment of the THAAD surface-to-air missiles in Israel increased our capabilities in defending Israel. And we got the potential legitimacy that if they retaliate, the second round of strikes will go all the way. And the Iranians got the picture and understood that they are walking into a trap. So they rather get the insult and decided to halt the retaliation and to contain the strike of Israel. As for the future, it all related into the position of the United States, the Trump effect, and what do he think is a better strategy towards Iran. If Trump thinks that a better deal is better off than a strike, we're going to go to a deal. It seems like he wants to end wars, not to start wars, and he's the genius, the art of the deal guy, transactional. He wants to create deals in the Middle East. So I sense that he would prefer a deal. But the added benefit we have now in terms of strategy, that for the first time we have credible military threat. Why is it credible? Because most Israelis want to conduct it. And that's credible. You want to conduct an operation, it is credible. So maybe Iran will be faced with the dilemma. To go to a better deal or to risk being struck by Israel.
Do the numbers for Israelis who would hit Iran now while they're weak maintain if Trump and the United States are not on board?
No. Most professionals would condition it. I'm not talking about the general sentiment in the street, but most professionals know. It's not a single strike. We should probably revisit it or repeat it. We would probably need some form of backing in the international platforms, that is the Security Council, and we need additional capabilities. That's a completing capabilities, not crucial. 90% of the job we can do ourselves. The additional 10%, we need some form of assistance, practical assistance capabilities from United States.
So are we talking about the mother of all bombs, trying to make sure that comes out of the back of an American B-2 to be able to strike the underground enrichment facility at Fordow?
It's not crucial, but yes, it will be better for us. We can do, if you're going to go all the way to a strike, you must ensure that it is 100% proof that you have crippled the project for 5 or 6 years. And they will never take time in order to get to the conclusion that the better way is to sneak into a bomb. So you need really comprehensive capabilities. We can do it out, but it's better off with.
So when we think about this being an opportune time for Israel to strike Iran, is it mostly because of the demise of Hezbollah, or is it about that you have a cleaner aircraft path through Syria and in parts of Iran to get to those facilities, or was that not really the limiting factor?
Let's start, first of all, from the challenge, from the threat. Iranian officials are now reconsidering their nuclear strategy. It's out in the public. It's not a secret intelligence. They are speaking right now about whether the fact that they are just on the threshold is enough. And that potential nuclear project, or going all the way, or going the next phase, can create existential threat to Israel. So it's not just a matter of opportunities; it's a matter of risks. As Americans and as citizens of the globe, you don't want the Middle East to go into a nuclear race. That will end up very bad. The Middle East is a very dangerous place. Lots of actors. Nobody trusts another. Religion is a major factor. Non-rational decision making. So all of those elements, when you put nuclear on above, not healthy for the safety of the globe. So that's the threat. In terms of opportunities, I think the Hezbollah element is more crucial.
Got it.
Because we can strip off Iranian surface-to-air capabilities once again, even if they will rearm. We have introduced special military capabilities, and it was just a glimpse of added special capability that was not exposed to the world yet, but Iranians who investigated the last strike knows what I'm speaking about.
Well, it's interesting that you're able to admit that, yes, it could be successful. A good standard would be that it be degraded for 5 to 6 years. It's good that you've put something out there for us to be able to understand. One last question before we close for today. Still on the case of the Iranian nuclear program, I'm holding an article that was published by FDD, the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, about the curious case of Iran's destroyed nuclear site. I don't know if you're able to say anything about this, but the article claims that Israel did hit a building known as Taliban 2, which had housed experiments during Iran's pre-2004 nuclear weapons program. Any light you can shed on any of the target sets used during the first two Israeli bombings of Iran in recent months?
Well, during the second strike, there was 2 strikes that was a demonstration of capabilities and intelligence infiltration. One was on a nuclear site and another one was an energy site. Energy site was not that important. It was just signaling about the economy factor. The other site was called Perchin. That's the name. And in that nuclear site, we have struck 2 elements inside the same compound. One of the elements related to plastic TNT capability that's used in order to create the implosion system on a nuclear device. As you probably know, you need some TNT, you need some plastic TNT in order to shape the shape of the mold of the core of the atomic bomb. And the other one is a little more sensitive, but I can say it was the unique measuring capabilities for the weaponizing program, and it was so unique and so classified that most officials in the Iran didn't know its existence, and it is very hard to occupy or to buy it, and it was eliminated totally. Very accurate. In order to do that, you need to be very accurate in your scribe.
General, thank you so much. We have learned an enormous amount from you. Thank you for your time and for appearing on Intelligence Matters.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
That was General Tamir Hayman. I'm Michael Allen. Join us next week for another episode of Intelligence Matters.
Intelligence Matters is produced by Steve Dorsey with assistance from Ashley Berry. Intelligence Matters is a production of Beacon Global Strategies.